this study actually just came out that I thought was pretty interesting, and I wanted to share with you guys some of the details. So one of the main benefits of a ketogenic style diet, as many of you are aware of, obviously there's the weight loss aspects, there's the more stabilization of blood sugar and insulin, there's all the brain benefits, but I think many of you, based upon the surveys that you filled out and your interaction and with some of our Facebook groups, etc., are over the age of 35, or getting close to 40, etc. And today's actually my birthday. I'm turning 35, and one thing that we notice in their mid 30s and 40s is we want to slow down the aging process, and that's one of the kind of a hidden or often not talked about benefit of the ketogenic diet is that it really mimics, long story short, the ketogenic diet mimics the same metabolic milieu that's associated with calorie restriction, which is one of the most scientifically validated ways to slow down the aging process. So good news, friends, you don't have to chronically restrict your calories. You can just be low carb, you can exercise, you can implement some element of time restricted feeding, and you can mimic calorie restriction, which is really, really cool. All right, so I was just reviewing before the phone got all messed up this study. I'll just quickly go through this. Walter Longo has found that 5 consecutive days of a low-calorie diet, so you can implement this when your life load is really busy, when you have kids going back to school, a lot of sports, family is coming in, whatever. If you want to just maybe one meal a day for 5 consecutive days, try that. Just 5 consecutive days out of every month. That's it. And, these researchers, I believe it's UCLA and USC and so on, have found that just doing that for 3 months, so a total of 15 days out of every 90 days of calorie restriction, guess what? It improved all these different biomarkers related to chronic diseases, and there was loss of visceral adipose tissue, not too much loss of muscle mass, and so on. So keep that in your, as an ACE card, keep that in the back of your mind when you're doing a deload week, when you're traveling, when life load is busy. Just want you guys to understand that there's so many different ways to implement this element of time-restricted feeding and or intermittent fasting. Okay, so got some questions here. Thanks to all of you that sent these in on the Facebook chat or an email. So question came in, is a higher carb day necessary if someone says, okay, it's not necessary. So this is a great point. A high carb day is necessary if you feel as though your workouts are not as effective as they used to be. For example, you're not as strong, you're losing muscle mass, you're losing volume. That's when you want to throw a high carb day in there. And I believe Paula is on. Let me just check here. We have some rowers that are in part of the cohort, the group that you guys are in, and they're rowing is anaerobic. It's glycolytic work, and so to expect to be fully keto and yet do this glycolytic work is not it's not really logical. And so high carb days are essential for people that are very physically active, that are really pushing the needle and doing glycolytic work. And let's just break that down. What is glycolytic work? It's something you all should probably know about. This means when you're doing very short duration, high intensity exercise under a time constraint. So, for example, I know Karina does a lot of CrossFit style, group fitness style classes. You can call them like combat type classes, and so forth. And so that would be a glycolytic type work. And so, particularly if it's under a time constraint. For example, it could be body weight squats, as many as you can do for 45 seconds. So you're hammering out, right? So at the end of that session, that 45-minute burst, you're going to be experiencing some sort of lactic acid buildup, and that's indicative of that glycolytic work. So this is where throwing in a high-carb day can help to replenish that glycogen, to tell the body that it's okay to burn glucose for fuel, and so on. So I wish there was a magic answer for exactly how you do this. Unfortunately, there's some tinkering and testing, and so you all need to get comfortable testing things out. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not going to work, and that's part of the process. So what's a good rule of thumb? It depends, again, on how much weight you have to lose and how long you've had the weight and how insulin sensitive you are. I think one high carb day every 5 days is very safe, it's very conservative, even if you're trying to lose weight. So what does that look like? That's more sweet potatoes, butternut squash, acorn squash. Just think of things, carbohydrates that you can buy at your local farmer's market. That's what you should focus on. Seasonally available carbs, excuse me. Some people go 3 days on after 2 weeks straight of keto. I've met some gurus, if you will, that's their approach. They've been doing that for years. You know, they mark on their calendar every 2 weeks. They do 3 days of basically ad libitum feeding, where they just eat whatever the heck they want. It's like a 3 cheat day in a row. Me personally, I think that's a little excessive. It may not be very good for weight loss, but that works for that person. So just figure out what really works for you. I tend to not have any, me personally, and same with Deanna, and people that we're personal friends with and talk about this stuff with, we personally don't have any structured high carb days. It depends on the activity that we do. For example, if we're going on a long hike in backcountry skiing or something that's aerobic, you know, there's no need to really replenish a bunch of those carbohydrates. We'll just go pure fat and protein, no problem. But if we're doing weightlifting, if we're doing sprinting, we're doing a lot of paddleboarding, even mountain biking, stuff like that, then we're going to throw in some carbs on those days. And there's actually, let me just jump forward just a little bit to this question here. Where is it? There's not a question here. Okay, yeah, this ties into this question, so I might as well address it now. And then we'll go back to those other questions. This question was from an individual, and she said, you know, I try to be keto as much as I can, but I noticed that eventually I need some healthy carbs here and there, like sweet potatoes. Should you have it before the workout or after? So this really depends on your goals. If your goal is to burn fat for fuel during the workout, then have the carbohydrate after. If your goal is to have a really, really good workout, have the carbohydrate before. So, you know, Paula, she's been on many, many times. You guys have probably heard her voice. She's a rower, competitive rower. She's training for events. So, and she wants to lose weight. So she's kind of wants both, right? And it's hard to perform optimally and cut weight at the same time. That's probably the most challenging thing to do. So what do? You know, we advise Paula, and this will apply to this question, hopefully help you all out, understand the concept, the paradigm here is, we said, Paula, would it be possible if you could get your schedule from your coach a week ahead of time, and then you can plan your meals accordingly? So on the longer, slow distance type workout days that are kind of volume based, more heavily aerobic, on those days, don't worry about carving up beforehand. But on days where you're doing a lot of glycolytic, short, you know, duration, under time constraints, 500-meter sprints, whatever it may be, you know, it would help you, and you can lose weight at the same time, because, you know, if you have a really good workout, that's going to boost your resting metabolic rate and help you burn fat after the workout's over, right? So it makes, you can still burn fat even if you have carbs before your workout, okay? And so for the answer to this question would be, you know, should you have it before or after? It depends. How hard your workout is, what type of exercise you're doing during that workout, and how important is fat loss or performance for you. If performance is more important for you, then err on the side of having more carbohydrates before the workout. If fat loss is more important for you, err on the side of having carbohydrates after the workout. You see? So this is where, again, this is going to change for all of you with the seasons, with how intensely you're working out, and how your metabolic rate is. So this I wish there was just like a protocol that every single person on planet Earth could follow, but that's just not the case. This is where you really got to tinker and test with your body. And like Karina, I believe she's on, and she's mentioned before, so I know this is public knowledge, you know, when she was doing really low carb and a lot of time restricted feeding and doing exercise, you know, full keto, she got a little dizzy after the workout, right? So why was that? Well, she was depleting her muscle glycogen. She was depleting the glycogen, by the way, just for sake of completion, is stored glucose chains within your muscle tissue in your liver. So during her workouts and during her overnight fast, she depleted her liver glycogen. The workout depleted her muscle glycogen. She had nothing left in the tank. And so she felt very lethargic, tired, almost fainted after the workout. Thankfully, her husband grabbed her. So, you know, what do we do in that case? Well, it wouldn't hurt her, especially on days where it's very glycolytic, to maybe have some blueberries beforehand, maybe half a sweet potato, and so forth. Yeah, will she be burning as much fat during the workout? Maybe not. But keep this in mind, guys. Even if you don't burn fat during your workout, when you do a hard workout, your body preferentially goes into fat burning mode after. Now you might wonder why or how that is. I know a lot of you love these detailed solutions and stuff, and that's why you join this. It's very interesting how the body works. Even though you're burning sugar for fuel, let's take a sprinter. A sprinter's doing 50-meter sprints, 100-meter sprints, at most a 400-meter, right? Very glycolytic. They are burning carbohydrates for fuel. If you look at their body's metabolism after they do that very glycolytic, very anaerobic work, you know, the body starts to replenish that glycogen. So what it does while it's able to replenish the glycogen is selectively kick on ketosis and fat-burning metabolic pathways. So that's why weightlifters and sprinters can look more lean and muscular than, say, marathon runners. But even though the substrate, meaning the fuel that they use when they're working out, is different. So that's kind of interesting. So don't be so scared of having a little bit of carbohydrates during your workout, because by just having a really, really good workout where you're giving it all you have, you're burning a lot more fat for fuel in the post-workout window. That's where the magic happens. So hopefully that helps a little bit. All right. Question number 2. This was a long email, and these questions, thankfully, were summarized. But question number 2, along the same lines, is do you recommend BCAAs? Yes, I still do recommend BCAAs. I think they're very fantastic. Leucine is one of the most important branched-chain amino acids, and guess what? It's very ketogenic, right? This individual says, I usually train fasted because I don't have much time in the morning. I have heard that a full spectrum of amino acids is better, such as that found in whey. So, yeah, whey protein also has aminoglobulins, which are good for the gut. It has cysteine, which is good for glutathione production. There is a lot of benefits. But whey protein might be a little insulinogenic. So what do you do here? Well, this individual is training hard. I would suggest playing around with it. You can have the amino acids before you work out and take the whey protein post-workout, because having an insulin spike post-workout is a good thing. Having it during your workout may or may not be such a good thing. So that would be my recommendation. Now, everyone is so different here. Some people can really train fasted and not feel fatigued and lethargic and all that. That's a good sign that you're fat adapted. Other people, myself, before I got all into this, I could never train on an empty stomach. I'd always need food, or I'd feel lethargic and like low blood sugar. So good for you for training on an empty stomach. By the way, if you have caffeine on an empty stomach when you train, guess what? You kick up fat burning like a very high percentage. So caffeine is very ketogenic. It causes the liver to make ketones, which is great. So a huge fan of caffeine before you exercise. All right. Question number 3, what would be the minimum amount of veggies you recommend? I often find myself feeling better with almost zero carb approach. So I'm wondering where there's diminishing returns that sets in. Yeah, so this is a wonderful question because, for some people, having just like eggs and bacon and butter, you can feel real light, real lean and all that. But you know what? The long-term potential ramifications with the impact that would have on your gut microbiome is relatively unknown, and I would say is not necessarily favorable. So my suggestion would be to definitely have veggies, and don't be so worried about the carbohydrates from veggies and the fiber. Long-term, that's going to protect you from different diseases like colon cancer, intestinal cancer, brain cancer, liver cancer, lung cancer, all that, right? So, we can't just have meat and fat. We need to have those veggies for their anti-cancer metabolic properties, and we can cause, a decreased diversity in our gut microbiome if we have a diet devoid of these veggies. So I know sometimes you can feel real light and lean and all that, just having the eggs and the protein and fats, but you got to keep the veggies in there, right, for long-term health. So that's just part of the thing, part of having the reduction in endotoxin absorption. We know that we have 5 grams of endotoxin-containing bacteria in our GI tract. That can be inadvertently crossed into the intestinal, on the other side of the intestinal environment, and can, guess what, cause inflammation, cause insulin resistance, cause long-term chronic ailments. So you got to have the veggies. Okay, and this ties into question number 4. I had linked a paper on the Facebook group showing that dairy fat may be protective against endotoxemia. Do you have any thoughts on this? It was in rats, unfortunately. So many of the human clinical studies, this is a great question, by the way, but many of the human clinical studies, when it comes to, I was just checking my phone to make sure I'm still on here. So many of the human clinical studies, when it comes to metabolic endotoxemia, and basically what these studies are trying to do is to induce gut damage so that these bacterial fragments come across and penetrate and cause inflammation. Long story short, many of these studies have used, guess what, butter and cream, right from dairy products. So, yeah, you have to be careful. And by the way, just as a side thing here, this individual said, this one study was in animals. You got to see who funded the study, because oftentimes it's the dairy industry or the egg industry, when these studies look favorable. So anyway, interesting stuff there. But yeah, dairy is not the most evil thing in the world when consumed periodically. I mean, look at Europeans, they eat a lot of dairy and are generally healthier than Westerners, but it's raw dairy, it's grass-fed, and so on. So you have to think about the environment that the animal was raised. Great question. This was a really, really good question, and I believe we've addressed this in other calls, but just for sake of completion, I wanted to address it here, and that has to do with when should you test your ketones and glucose. So, again, there's no real magic to this. It really depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Now, what I would suggest is to get a baseline, just see your fasted state. How's your body doing when you're fasting? Are you, this can give insights into your level of sleep apnea, sleep disorder breathing. This can tell a lot about, how your sleep is at night and so forth. So if you wake up and your glucose is really high, maybe you have some mild sleep apnea or sleep disorder breathing, and that's causing insulin resistance and the free radical pathology and kind of causing some damage during the night. Ideally, when we're fasted, we'd have low glucose and high ketones, ketones above 0.5 millimolar. We want to, if we're checking after a meal. Now, let me just say, what should happen is your ketones should be low in the morning and progressively go higher and higher throughout the day. That's generally the process that I found, because you're eating more fat throughout the day and the liver's converting that to ketones, and then it's crossing the blood-brain barrier. But it totally depends. Your ketones are going to be higher after exercise. Stress and all that is going to drop your ketones and raise your blood glucose. So just keep that in mind. One thing you want to keep in mind is when you're testing consecutive days on your glucose or your ketones or whatnot, you want to keep in mind how was your sleep the night before, and how was your stress or your life load during that day. If your stress was really high and your sleep was crappy, don't be surprised if your ketones are low and your glucose is high, because that's normal. That's the body's adaptive response, right? If the body thinks that there's a stressor and it's trying to help prepare you to run or fight, right? That fight or flight response. So keep that in mind. Now the gold standard, you can just go look up a glucose tolerance test, and I believe what they do is test every 30 minutes, so you can, after you give the subjects a big 200-gram load of glucose, basically to rule out diabetes and all that sort of stuff in the lab, they'll test glucose every 30 minutes. You don't have to do this every 30 minutes, but I suggest, when you're first getting started, to get a baseline, test your levels 30 minutes after, an hour after, and then either 90 minutes after or 2 hours after. And then ideally, you would see your glucose dropping and the ketones rising. If that doesn't happen, then you need to look at your lifestyle. How's your exercise? How are your steps per day? How's your sleep? How's your stress? And then look at the macros of the meal and how many meals you've had that day and your feeding window. So those are kind of things. All right, I'm getting a lot of questions from you all. Let me just see here. Much better now. Sound is great. Should you have the carbs mainly in your first meal after the workout or throughout all of your meals? Karina, great question. In your specific case, because I know we've talked before, I would say have most of your carbs earlier in the day after that workout, and just see how that works for you. And then if you, because there's so many people then that say, well, I have my carbs at night. I've never been a huge fan of carbs at night. Just me personally, it doesn't work. If you look at the research, not that great, but I know, Karina, you get up real early, you work out hard. I would suggest having your carbs after for your first meal, and then keep it low carb, high fat for the rest of the day. Try that out for fat loss. Yeah, okay. So hopefully, Karina, let me know if that helps answer. Danielle says, if I take my coffee with some coconut milk and stevia in the morning, is that still okay? So that's technically not fasting. And I would suggest the coconut milk might be okay, if and only if it's unsweetened. So the things that are going to kick you out of that fat, fat doesn't really have a major effect on the insulin and glucose and all that, and that's not really going to kick you out of that state of quote unquote fasting. But anything sweet and any protein will. So the jury's still out on what sort of effect stevia has in the body. But my thinking process is, although it's not glycemic, stevia does still trigger some sort of insulin response. Okay, and even though it's probably the healthiest non-sugar sweetener, it's still going to trigger some of that. We can't outsmart the body. There's taste receptors and sweet receptors all throughout the body. Even these, think about it, the same receptors that are on your tongue that sense bitter, savory and sweet and sour and all that are found in your heart. Believe it or not, it's crazy. These things are found everywhere, and this research is unbelievable. So I really don't think we can trick the body, even if we have these quote-unquote natural sweeteners. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad, but just keep that in mind. So Danielle, just try to do a little experiment. Try 1 whole week with no stevia and just some coconut milk or coconut fat in your coffee. See how that changes things. And if it doesn't change anything, then just add in the stevia and don't worry about it. So thoughts on raw dairy? Here's some. I have so many. This is a great question, Jennifer. Walter Willett, who is an epidemiological researcher at Harvard University. I heard him talk at what's called the American Association for Cancer Research. It's a big annual event. Literally 30,000 people from around the world, scientists and laymen, go to this event. It's really amazing. If it's ever in your city, you should go. Anyway, he wanted to find out. He's one of the most well-published researchers in the field of nutrition. He's at Harvard University. He gave a talk. I remember it very well, even though it was back in 2009. But long story short, he said, out of all the things we looked at that cause cancer, you hear it's like charbroiled meats, hot dogs, and some of those processed meats. He wanted to look at all these different things. Let's see, heterocyclic hydrocarbons from fried foods, and then he looked at dairy. So he looked at like 5 things that, through this NHANES data and all this sort of stuff. Dairy is consistently linked with cancer. So that's what I'm going to say. So Jennifer said, is raw dairy okay? So raw dairy, cooked dairy, whatever. Dairy is linked with, it's paradoxical. Lauren Cordain, the founder of the Paleo Diet, talks about this, and I interviewed him if you want to listen to it. Dairy spikes insulin. Even though it doesn't affect glucose, it spikes insulin. And that may be involved in its ability in growth promoting, causing cancer. So if you love dairy, if you live where you can find grass-fed dairy and stuff like that, it's a treat. Don't make it an everyday thing. That's the deal. If you can live by that, then I think then you're probably okay. If you're having dairy every day, you may run into issues. Now, if you're 25 and you're having dairy every day, probably not a big deal. If you're 65 and you're having dairy every day, that might be more worrisome. Why? Because your body's already at an increased risk for developing cancer, right? Cancer is related to advanced age, okay? So Jennifer has a big question, which is awesome. She says, also my husband has lost 30 pounds of keto, which is really great, and he really didn't need to lose, okay? But he was already on the trimmer side. He was doing it because he has this Down phenomenon trying to prevent type 2 diabetes. Okay, great. But now he is too thin, and I'm not sure how to help him gain some muscle, gain some weight while staying keto. He's just not hungry due to keto, but he feels great. He's just very slim, like too slim now. Jennifer, I totally get it. I tend to fall into that category if I personally don't make an effort to eat more. And so the thing with the keto is you feel great not even eating food, right? And so what do we do there? Well, this is where obviously we need the stimulus from the exercise. So getting him in the gym, working out more would be great to get that stimulus, and then throwing in another meal into the mix. So, as long as his blood sugar is okay and so on, then you could throw in maybe another meal, maybe a protein shake. As we talked about earlier, the branched chain amino acids, that could help there too. So that's what I would suggest, throwing in a meal, keeping that feeding window a little bit open. So we talked about for weight loss, it's really good to really constrict that feeding window, keep it to 6 to 8 hours. But if you want to gain muscle, you're going to have to keep the window a little bit more open. And Jennifer, the interview with Tommy Wood that I just posted on the High Intensity Health YouTube channel, we talk all about that. So about gaining muscle on keto. So check that out. Karina says, okay, this is what I'm doing. Thanks. Karina also says, what are some other ways to tell you're fat adapted if you don't have a ketone blood meter? Yeah, Karina, great question. The easiest way is just how do you feel if you can go without food for an extended period of time? So if you can pretty much only eat one meal per day, which is good to do one day a week when you're not very active, how do you feel? Are you ravenously hungry? Are you crashing? If you're able to go for 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours with no food, that's, in my estimation, in talking with other people to verify this, that's a really good proxy that will tell you that, you know what, I'm fat adapted. I can go for an extended period of time without eating, which means that your body is taking body fat, converting it to ketones, and burning fat for fuel. So that's what I would suggest. Also, are you losing weight? So not only losing weight, but specifically, how do your pants feel on your body? Are they looser? Those pants that maybe used to fit you a few years ago, and you can now put them on. That's a really good marker that you're burning fat because you're losing weight. Okay, so Jennifer says, what about grass-fed ghee, buddy? So I would say ghee, yeah. So we have ghee a fair amount in the house. I think that's fine. But again, rotate your sources of fats. But when I was referring to more dairy, it was milk. It was really milk and yogurt that were linked with cancer and so on. And so, because why? If you look at butter or even ghee, it's very low in casein, very low in protein. So it's not going to have that insulinogenic effect that something like milk would. Okay, wonderful questions, guys. We're going to address this one. Okay, this individual sent me an email, says, I really like fruit, etc. Would a peach or a kiwi day throw me out of ketosis? I maintained less than 20 grams of sugar a day and 30 grams of carbs a day. Okay, so 20 grams of sugar per day and less than 30 grams of carbs a day are totally different things. 20 grams of sugar is a lot. That's a lot. I would definitely say if you're having like gluten-free stuff or keto stuff that has sugar in it, that's a lot of sugar. Now, if that's coming from berries and apples, probably not as bad, but hopefully that's not refined sugar. So whoever, if you're live and you wrote this to me, feel free to jump in the comment bar. But, it comes back to kind of what we talked about. As long as you're having carbs around your exercise window, that's why I'm a huge fan of exercise, as you know, it's not that big of a deal. I should say it's not as big of a deal. So just keep that in mind. It's okay. You're gonna, if you have a peach or kiwi, around when you exercise, no big deal. Is it gonna temporarily kick you out of ketosis? Yeah. But as long as you're active and you're eating low carb in general, and you're not having 10 peaches, then you should be probably fine. So that's the thing is, peaches and kiwis, all these, depending upon where you live, these are in season right now, and that's why I really am a believer that we should be cyclically in a ketogenic state. Use it as a fat loss tool. Use it as a tool to enhance brain health, preserve the brain, and all that. But when these fruits and these wonderful berries are in season, I think we're missing out on a great opportunity to have healthy foods that enjoy life, and it's good for our microbiome, right? So that's just my 2 cents on that one. Okay, so this individual says, what do you think about going keto, fasting if I've been amenorrheic for a year and a half? When I cut starches but loads of it, I can't read this, I have to move my thing here. Okay, when I cut out starches but still loads of veggies, I get a keto rash on my face and I get constipated. Great question. So this is a very common question that I get all the time, actually. So the amenorrhea part, I would suggest, I mean, usually that can be from undercalories, that can be from anemia, that can be from overexercise. So there's quite a few reasons why someone may not be menstruating. So we want to rule that out. Now, if someone is anemic, they're going to have thyroid issues, they're going to have energy issues. So you want to rule out anemia if you're not having your menstrual cycle. And how's your training cycle and history of either bulimia or anorexia? So we want to address those different things. I don't think there's a problem with time-restricted feeding, but if I was you, I wouldn't intentionally fast. You can compress your feeding window down to 12 hours just to be safe, which is a little bit wider than normal. But see how that goes for you. Go low carb and try that out. But when this person says she goes keto, she gets a rash on her face, that can be from the types of fat that you're eating. So we want to make sure that we're having fat from fruit-type fats, right? Like fruit, nuts, and seeds, which would be like an avocado, coconut, and then nuts and seeds, not seed oils. So that would be canola and rapeseed and stuff like that. So the olive, the avocado, the coconut, those are like fruit-bearing fats, and so those can be good. But we do see the rash on the face from endotoxemia. So that would be like too much animal-based fats, so a lot of bacon and all pork rinds and all that sort of stuff, which is, not the healthiest thing to do. And then the constipated thing can come from just not enough veggies and, again, just too much fat. So, I would suggest, with this individual with the rash on the face and the constipation, that we maybe don't focus so much on keto, but just a diverse diet, really kind of get that microbiome health boosted up a little bit. Beforehand, because based upon some of these questions that would lead me down that road, and then we can introduce the keto thing a little bit later on down the road. But first, we want to check out that anemia, make sure we don't have an anemia going on. So those are just my 2 tips. I mean, this might be one where you go and work with a practitioner, get some blood work, and so on. So let me just see if there's any other questions here. Okay, cool. We got a lot of questions here. Okay, Paula Wood says, okay, what brands of BCA is safe? Or is there something where stay away from when looking for? Yeah, okay, really good. So you guys know I'm biased. You get 15% off Zymogen. I like their Zymobolics. Why? Because it's free of glutamine. So Paula brought up a great question. What to look out for? You want to look out for synthetic sweeteners. So most of the workout stuff, and this is why I'm developing my own line of supplements, because I can't even recommend, outside of Zymogen, there's not one branched amino acid that I can recommend to you. They're just loaded with synthetic sweeteners and just a bunch of yucky stuff. So you want to look out for synthetic sweeteners because those can cause insulin resistance. Those are bad news bears. And you want to look out for glutamine in the branched chain amino acid product itself. A lot of companies know that people like glutamine. They know that people like branched chain amino acids. So they put them together. There's a lot of research showing that when you pair those together, neither the glutamine nor the BCAAs are as effective as if they were alone. So what do? Have your branched chain amino acids by themselves. Again, you get 15% off on the Zymogen stuff. I like it. Zymobolics is the one that I recommend. It has added arginine to help with the absorption of the branched chain amino acids. Okay, let's see here. So how do you feel about goat milk products, goat kefir, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, I think anything fermented is going to be a little bit better. Goat kefir, goat yogurt, stuff like that. Watch out on the sugar. Again, think about your genetics too. If your genetics are such that you were eating your ancestors ate goat products, and you're probably going to be okay. So keep in mind that. But Susan, also if the individual that you're asking this for, or it's for yourself, if you have blood sugar issues or you want to lose weight, it's probably best to just kind of calm down on all the dairy with protein in it for now. For now, you can go back to it later, but that would be my tip for now. Again, periodically fine, but not an everyday type thing. Lori says, would eating keto be better in the fall, winter season, following a more natural way of eating? Yeah, that's Lori. This is wonderful, and this is you're going to see a podcast coming out very, very soon that will talk about this. But that's the thing. That's what everyone and it makes it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we, in Seattle, Washington here, grow a lot of our own fruits and vegetables and all this sort of stuff. And we, right now, it would be hard for us to be 100% keto because we have raspberries and squash and all that coming in. So I think that doesn't mean that it's bad to be keto in the fall, because humans would naturally be keto just by extension of this fast and feeding, famine cycles that humans were exposed to. But there was no refrigerators and 24-hour delivery systems and Uber Eats and Amazon delivers, food right back in the day. So humans naturally would go into ketosis because of periods of famine and going for a few days without food. So that being said, just keep the seasonality in mind and where you live and what grows by you. I think humans, we adapt to our environment and try to adapt to your local environment as best you can. That's just the best thing that you think about. But, a lot of people, that I talk to that are in tune with this, say that during the winter is a great time to fast and do more ketogenic style stuff. Why? Because food would be really unavailable, particularly if you live in the northern parts of North America. And, it just makes sense. And some of the mental elation that comes and that feeling of euphoria, and you feel really good when you're fasting and keto would help you get through the dark winter months. So that's what people are talking about. Okay, so Jennifer says you talk a lot about endotoxins, but not how to get rid of them if you suspect your body might have them. Well, yeah, Jennifer, that's a great point. Thanks for pointing it out. On these calls, I don't talk about that, but in the masterclass videos, there's 4 videos that will tell you everything you need to know about endotoxins. But you can't clear them out. They're there anyway. You just don't want to facilitate or upregulate the body's absorption of them. Now, how do you do that? Well, that's from eating a lot of bacon, a lot of lard, and excessive butter and liquid fat. Okay, because the way that they're absorbed, those fats are absorbed via what's called chylomicrons. They enhance the absorption of endotoxins. So, in other calls, Jennifer, we have talked a lot about how to prevent them from being absorbed. So, high fiber diet, a lot of different polyphenols, and really a diverse array of whole foods is one of the best ways to prevent them from being absorbed in the first place. And also in some of the videos in the masterclass, we talk about pumpkin seeds, sesame seed oil, and pine nuts. Actually, pine nuts help to upregulate an enzyme that can break endotoxin down. So check that out in the module 2 of the masterclass in the back end. Have I heard of the product restore? Yes, I have. I don't know too much about it. I haven't read the studies on it. Okay, Karina, thanks for that. Thanks for the happy birthday wishes. Thank you so much. Robin, thanks for that. Ajinomoto. Yeah, so Jennifer, Ajinomoto, they're a great company. I think their amino acids are good. So they are expensive, right? But they make good products. Their GABA is really good too. Okay, guys, I think we're good here. So I know Regina and a few of you have asked, like, okay, so what about ongoing, support? Is this thing ending and all this sort of stuff? Well, yeah, it is and it isn't. So I'm going to change the format. We have over 200 people in this course and all that sort of stuff now. And for new people that register, they're going to get access to the past webinars. But going forward, the webinars and some of these behind-the-scenes stuff and new videos and the explanations of some of the points that these researchers say and so forth, it's going to be more of a membership model. And so there's kind of 2 levels on that. So you guys are not going to lose any information. It's not like you're not going to not get access to stuff, but everything you paid for, the downloads, like all that stuff in the members area, the Facebook group, like that's still there for you. But like I'm interviewing people every week. There's new stuff coming out. There's new research. Webinars like this. That's going to be, it takes me time, right? And it costs me money to go fly around and meet with these people and then break it down for you guys and edit it and all that sort of stuff. So there's 2 different membership models. Pick the one that fits your budget and suits you best based upon, I know a lot of you have learned a whole lot. At this point, I mean, you're asking great questions. You really are in tune with your body. You're becoming more intuitive eaters. So there's the $4.95 a month model, which would basically get early access, a lot more additional information than just the free level, and then the $24.95 a month with more detailed stuff, webinars like this, early access to the documentary, a lot more cooking type tutorials and things along those lines. So it really depends, if you how much more ongoing kind of support you want, email access, and all that, right? If you're pretty much solid, you're good to go. Maybe you don't need any of this, but if you do, want to stay involved and hop on some of these webinars and get more email support, kind of thing, then just kind of pick your path here, with this link, and I'll send this out to you guys, and yeah, so that's kind of what the model that we're going towards. Just because there's going to be ongoing expenses on our end to continue to create content and to deliver new content, but like I said, you get lifetime access to what's existing, to what you paid for, and all that good stuff. And I've had so much fun working with all of you. This has been really, really great. It's a lot of fun for me to share this information. I just love diving into the research and hearing your stories back. I know Todd and 2 others have shared amazing stories about their family members that have lost a lot of weight and have had Alzheimer's, and they're thinking a lot better, thinking more clearly, and it's just so awesome to hear. So I'm definitely here for you guys, and you don't have to do any of these if you don't want to. I do free videos every week, but this member model really helps me create new content if you're interested in that. So let me see here. I'll definitely get the archives out to you guys. How do you feel about natto? I think natto is awesome. I do. Susan. Danielle says, is there any link between a ketogenic diet and lactic acid after training? Yeah, I mean, this is, okay, I told you 2 weeks ago I do heavy training 5 days a week, weightlifting, and then some cardio, and I'm so sore after training since the ketosis. What do you think about that? So I think you're not having enough carbohydrates, Danielle. I've noticed that myself. So that could be it. So have a little bit more carbohydrates. So the heavy legs, excessively sore, maybe you're not recovering, maybe not having enough calories associated with your training. So try throwing in more carbohydrates in there. And just as another simple thing, after your workout, do the foam roller. So just try hopping on the foam roller, see how that works for you. What I found is that can really help flush things out. And so we did a foam roller demo with Jeff McCoven on the YouTube channel. So go check out the playlist there. There's one that says regenerative therapies. And if you want to learn more about how to do the foam roller and where to put it and how long it should be on there for muscles, that will help, Danielle. Kathleen says, thanks for sharing all the information on my birthday. My pleasure, Kathleen. Really appreciate that. Thanks for that. So, guys, it's been awesome. I'm going to get you the recording. We'll still see you on the Facebook group and stuff like that. And if you want to, continue on with us and so forth, these kind of low-cost membership models, we'll keep this journey rocking and rolling and keep learning together and sharing good information together and moving the needle forward. So I'm really grateful that you made it this far, that you're still here. I love your questions and engagement, and hope you have a happy, healthy evening, and look forward to catching up with you soon.